Hi, I'm George Hussey from Automobile Atlanta. Today we're going to do the tour of the 944 Cabriolet. We've taken this car in from the original customer, loaded with miles, for a medium restoration, we call it. We've taken the body suspension off, we've taken the engine and transmission apart, and we're doing some cosmetic improvements also. But the car has some nice original paint on it, and it's got a pretty decent interior. But I'll show you around so we can get a good feeling for what breaks on these cars and how we usually repair things and what things look like stripped. First of all, I wanted to show you the power plant. The car was loaded with miles, yet the cylinders and pistons were in great shape. So all we had to do was put new bearings in it, put new rings in it, clean it up, maybe CAD plate some certain parts, and then with a new clutch, made everything back together. As you can see, with the engine in the front, the central drive tube, and the transmission transaxle, we call it, in the back, the car is almost 50-50 weight balance. So that's why it handles so wonderfully well. Usually people will never see a shot like this. That's why we sort of staged it a little bit before putting this back in the car. And since we have done both the drive tube, we had to rebuild it, new bearings and new clutch. It was easier just to drop the whole assembly out so that it'll go back into the car from underneath in all one piece. We have the service cover on this engine because the valve cover is not on and we don't want any dirt or debris getting here. We're not quite finished setting the cam timing for the 16 valve, but you can see the tour of the engine in another one of our videos. The Cabriolet shared the bumper treatment with the 944 Turbo, giving it a more modern look than the old 944. The polyurethane front bumper had the central driving lights and turn signals in it, along with a actually longer header panel than the stock 944, longer headlight covers, and longer fenders. So if any time one of these is damaged and you're looking for parts, you'll have to buy turbo parts to fix it, not regular 944 parts, because they won't fit. Just a subtle difference. The turbo nose had to be longer to incorporate the intercooler, and when they carried along the bodywork into the Cabriolet, they used all the same parts, and so that's why the nose is longer here. Also, there was the plastic belly pan up underneath, which often gets hit on curbing and breaks off. This one is the same way. We've already purchased a new one to bolt onto the car. Underneath the hood, one way you can tell instantly if the car has the original hood on it is if the stickers are still on. The later cars did away with the hood pad because the hood pads would deteriorate and the foam would fall all over the engine, so they took them off, but still had especially this sticker. If the stickers are missing, the hood's been replaced. That's simply it. And then we look into the inner structure of the car when looking at a car to buy, and especially look at the two frame members to see if there's any distortion in them. Because if there is, obviously the car's been hit in the front and one would question whether the car is still straight. We see the side molding 16 ventilator. This piece, if you bought it from Porsche, would probably be $100, which is crazy, and then you'd still have to paint it. The remote control mirrors, these were the same for all of the cars until they came out with the 968 and used the Aero style mirrors. The exterior door latches, these were a modification of the originals that had the plastic insert in them. These did not, and for a while they were embossed with Porsche, but Porsche got down on the manufacturer for selling them out the back door, so they made them take the script off. So when you buy a replacement now, instead of saying Porsche, it's just going to be blank. The Cabriolet also shared the lower rocker trim with the Turbo. This is very, very nice. It gives the car a lower appearance and also keeps debris from actually hitting the paint. It hits this plastic first. This is two pieces on either side. And then we go to a unique item here. This is the finishing strip for the Cabriolet rear quarter. There was never a Cabriolet built as a Cabriolet body. They were coupe bodies where they cut the rear end off and then they made these nice polyurethane covers that capped off the cut on the rear quarter panel. You can see, I can even put my fingernails up under this, that this is plastic and just slapped on there as American Sunroof, making the parts for Porsche, virtually made a kit and sent them to the factory to install on the car. The rear of the car is virtually unchanged from 1983, showing the Porsche script. The two taillights were actually first put on the 76 924, the bumper pads, which are 944 only, and then the turbo rear valance, which is an extremely nice aerodynamic piece with a relieved place for the muffler and a nice wraparound to incorporate some of the bodywork, and again, give the car a lower appearance, more racy, I would say. The deck lid, unique for the Cabriolet, with its third brake light on here, is another piece made by American Sunroof and sent to Porsche as a kit to install, making a coupe into a Cabriolet. The Cabriolet windshield frame was actually bent down from the coupe, and it has this unique Cabriolet trim on it, which is Cabriolet only, and it often cracks. These pieces are over $700 each new, so I hope yours is not cracked. The coupe does not fit. Vent windows, totally different and cut. And then the S2 door panel, sharing it with all of the coupes, has this speaker system in it, but flimsy at that. These would often deteriorate and fall apart, and they don't even make these pieces anymore. I'm going to show you the driver's side because it's not in very good shape. But it sounded great when it was new, putting a speaker in this panel and a speaker in this panel, using the cavity of the door to reflect the sound. The wiring harness here for the power windows has always been troublesome, as in opening and closing the door many times, the wires pinch, and then all of a sudden your door or your power windows don't work anymore, or your speakers don't work, and you wonder why, and it's the pinch in here. There's a nice boot over here, but it does very, very little to keep the wires from eventually pinching. Also, we have the door strap. This was modified from the 924 because the door strap originally had its holder as part of the door, and it broke all of the time. So they changed it to a strap and a hinge pivot, and this also broke, but at least you could bolt the hinge pivot back on. In 1985 and a half, they changed, we call it 85.2, February of 85, they changed the complete interior design to one looking more modern and more comfortable and gives more visibility. A beautiful interior, if I do say so myself. The design incorporated larger air conditioning vents, central instrument cluster covered with a sheet of clear plexiglass, power seats, and refined center console and armrest. One note here is that the glove box, which was quite spacious, had two plastic hinges on it. One, oh no, there's not one here. My point is these broke. These hinges broke all of the time, and somebody has come out with an aftermarket aluminum one to fix the problem. But as you can see, this glove box is flimsy at least, and if you wanted to buy a factory part, you'd have to buy the whole glove box with hinges built in, which is a very, very expensive thing. The control unit is behind the carpet on the passenger seat. As you can see, the control unit is here, Motronic control unit, along with the alarm relay. The alarm relay sometimes is very, very troublesome, but can easily be shorted underneath the fuel injection relay to bypass it. Another thing that is troublesome are the rear seat belts. The rear seat belts will always work, but their holsters were flimsy and break. This seat belt holster, as you can see, it's broken here, should stand the seat belt up nicely so you can grab it, but since the holster is broken, flops down. We sell these, many of these all the time. Also for the interior, you can see this one is broken as well. So as I mentioned about the door panel on the other side, this one, the driver's side, usually always takes the abuse because obviously somebody's always going to be in this car driving it. May not have a passenger in it. So as you can see, this door panel assembly is floppingly loose. The original flimsy clip's broken and everything is hanging. To buy this piece is over $700, and that's the only way to fix it because it is cheap plastic with clips that just fall apart. And you can see it's all loose and looks like hell. And this piece also, we sell many of these. This is the holder for the power windows and the switch for the mirror. The clips break off of this also, and it won't tuck back in there nicely, so you have another piece of stuff. The early cars had less plastic on them, so actually stayed together a little bit better. Center console, this was again 85.5, and this one is actually in better shape. This hinge always breaks. You believe they put a piece of plastic as a hinge, thinking that you're going to be able to open and close it 1,000 times without it actually splitting. But the clamshell is only $30 or so, so relatively inexpensive, and it fixes that problem. We've seen people put picture frame hinges on here and double-faced tape and all kinds of crap to try to fix it when they can easily just replace the clamshell. Later models had the equalizer added. This is actually a factory part added to the, well, not this one, but they did have an equalizer here available for the factory radio. The switch for the sunroof and for the convertible top is the same switch, and then we have the locking system switch and then the mirror switch to switch it from one to another to adjust it. Air conditioning is right here, the blower, the temperature, to turn the compressor on, to turn the front defroster on, and to recycle the air. This was troublesome in the early years. They had 3 or 4 or 5 modifications because the circuit board would go bad, rendering no air, no heat, no blower or anything to these cars. We sell both of the switches here, but they have to be soldered in, and on the later models plugged in. They were troublesome. A new switch is probably $800, so when you're looking for one of these cars, make sure the air works. Very expensive to fix. Hazard switch. Digital clock. These digital clocks were cheap. They never worked right, but they're not cheap to buy a new one. Porsche has superseded these also to a $700 part. I keep saying 700, but that's the range to fix the clock. A lot of people have gone to the convenience store and gotten one of those little round digitals and just stuck it on top of it. This is the sensor for the interior cabin temperature to turn the air colder or turn the heat hotter. And obviously the cigar lighter outlet. Central vents for the air conditioning and the heating. And then actually the reset knob for the trip odometer. Nobody ever knows what this thing is, but that's what it is right there. And finally we have the cruise control, the wipers, the turn signals, and then also headlight washers if so equipped. The problem with this is it's all one piece made by SWF, so if the turn signals go bad, you have to buy the whole assembly for the cruise control and the wipers and maybe even the headlight washers, and there are like 3 different part numbers, and you end up spending $500 to just fix your turn signals. So that is troublesome, and we always have to check these switches to make sure they all work. One of the nice things about the later cars, 85.2 and up, is the fact that they put the fuse block here in the engine compartment. The earlier cars had them above your left knee, and it was very hard to access. Change fuses, try to change the relays, just a big mess. So by putting it here, everything is very straightforward, sort of in our face. There's a fuse kit on the bottom, fuse diagram on the bottom of the lid, and everything, like I said, is very, very straightforward here and well protected from the weather, along with the improvement on the wiper system. They had a larger wiper motor which worked better. The earlier ones had a small shield on them, and they often became inundated with water as the water sat in this well coming off the hood and dripping into here. With the advent of the new body, they put this comprehensive cover over here, and this is the heating ventilation system, and very, very few late model wipers bit the dust like the early ones. And then, of course, Porsche discontinued the early wiper motors, which makes no sense. So if you have an early car with a bad wiper motor, you'd really have to search hard to get one. Battery is in the original place from 1977, and these batteries would sometimes overcharge due to a bad alternator and flood the acid down into the well, and then the well would get acid eaten, form a hole, and drip into the passenger compartment. So you're taking your passenger for a nice ride, and suddenly a bunch of water gets on their feet, and they wonder why, and it's because the battery has rotted through. This is a pretty extensive welding job because you have to take the whole heating ventilation system out to get to where you can weld without burning things. we've just completed an early car, which we can show you in another video. Cruise control unit right here. It's always been here. Improved washer bottle system. I don't know what they improved about it, quite frankly, but they made it a little less comprehensive because the early model washer bottles used to crack all of the time from dry rot. The headlight motor covered with rubber, knob up underneath to turn it up if these headlights ever get jammed. The motor after 78 never changed, always the same. It's important to pay good attention to these vacuum lines here. They can easily become disconnected and cause no vacuum going to things like the air conditioning, the heater valve, or the power brake booster where the vacuum comes, or the fuel pressure regulator, fuel pressure damper. So if you see a fault like high fuel pressure, poor gas mileage, your air conditioning not working properly, the heat on all the time, don't think there's something major wrong. Just look at these vacuum lines first and make sure they're all well connected and going to their proper place. There is a vacuum diagram in the factory manual that you can follow. You can see the air conditioning lines right here. Thankfully, they made them out of aluminum, but they still have rubber connectors going to them that are crimped on. Imagine springing a leak in one of these rubber connectors and trying to replace this line. Virtually have to take the engine compartment out, take the engine out, which is a major job just to replace the air conditioning line. Sure wouldn't want to do it to where we end up getting a new barium line and crimping it on to the end of the aluminum cable to fix the air conditioning more quickly and easily for somebody. When you buy one of these cars, make sure the air works. You can really get into it if it doesn't. Port for the Freon, and these can easily be converted to R134A even though they were R12 to begin with. And the dryers down here has always been mounted down here along with the low pressure switch, which is over here, and the headlight mechanism right here, which didn't change also from the very, very beginning until these later cars and the end of the run. Always worked, very, very reliable, using only one motor, unlike the 914, which used two. The federal DOT sticker is here. It gives you all the information on the car. When you're looking at one, make sure you see this sticker here. If the sticker's ripped off, something has happened. And then one final comment. You can see the hood shocks here, which don't usually last that long. But if you look back here, this hood is so close to the windshield that if we strain the hood a little bit, we could possibly have the back of this hit the windshield and crack it. So when you're changing these hood shocks, you have to be extremely careful not to back the hood onto the windshield. This windshield is at least $650 to replace. So please keep that in mind. And again, look how close this is. It's almost on right now when the hood is up. Bad design. And that's a quick tour of the 944 S2 Cabriolet. This is George Hussey from Automobile Atlanta. Thank you.